National leader Christopher Luxon announced plans to rein in government spending and address the cost of childcare. In his State of the Nation address over the weekend, National would also offer up to $75 a week for eligible whānau. Te Ao Rangahau Director and Massey University Economics Professor Matt Roscrew no Te Atiawa Ngāti Toma is with us now. Tēnā koe, Professor Roscrew. Thank you for joining us.
Kia ora, Neil.
What do you make of National's early childhood education plans?
Yeah, they were. That was a bit of a strange announcement for National. I could be accused of being a bit of a lefty every now and again, and this sort of policy at a National would have fit right in with Labor, I think. So I'm quite encouraged to see somebody talking about early childhood. I've got two kids under 5 in care, and man, it's expensive. $400 a week, I think we spend, and they're only in there 4 days. So I think any support would be really welcome. When you're thinking about people on minimum wage, you're looking at like 3 hours a day that people have to work to afford the childcare per kid. Yeah, I think it's long overdue that political parties started to talk about early childcare. National's approach, look, it's probably a little bit smaller than you would have liked to see. It would be neat to see them expand on it a bit, but it's cool to see them getting the conversation started.
Do you feel that whānau would be likely to see much impact from this policy?
Yeah, interesting, eh? So, well, up to $75 for whānau who are spending $400 a week or more and earning under $140,000. Scarily, $140,000 is not too much per household now. So a lot of people will be knocking on the door if both family members are working of that. But still, $75 is a tank of gas. It's a day's groceries, a couple of heads of broccoli. But no, I think $75 is actually quite a meaningful contribution that'd be really well received.
Dr. Roscrew, National seeks to fund this policy through cutting back on consultancy spending, and we know a lot is spent on consultants. Is this idea feasible, and what would it look like?
Yeah, look, this is a really, I think, a really good move by National to start to target the huge consultancy bill that we've always had. I used to work for the Ministry of Health 10 or plus years ago, and we had lots of consultants back. People would leave the ministry and come back and work for double the salary as a consultant. I've made plenty of money as a consultant myself from time to time. But I think it's fantastic to see people starting to eye up that big bill, 1.5% of government spending on consultants. Really hard to see that we're getting a lot of value for that money looking across our public sector at all the problems. So no, good move there, I think, for National to start to look at that consultancy bill.
Okay. Now, a report from Stuff over the weekend highlighted the growing private sector involvement in early childhood education. How concerned should we be about the sector?
Yeah, that's something that I think is really worth unpicking. It's good to see a few journalists starting to do that. We see more and more of these big chains coming out in the early childhood ECE sector, but also a lot of ECE sectors that are owned by trusts or charities that are then owned by very rich individuals or companies. And so there's some really strange behaviour and incentives going on. I think there's a lot of profit being made for some people, but we're not necessarily seeing an improvement in the quality of the centres or better off teachers. Or the ECE teachers that I know, I've got some in my family, aren't loving the sector. They love the children, but the money, the conditions, the expectations on them is pretty huge. And if they just go to primary, for example, they're usually in a much better place. So, yeah, there's a lot of challenges for that ECE sector, and I think the incentives for some of those private companies need to be looked at a little bit closely. Make sure we're getting good quality for the spend.
Yeah, that looks like a lot of money is spent in that sector.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Switching topics slightly, March 7th is Census Day for Aotearoa. How important is the census, and why should whānau get involved?
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a switch, but the census is incredibly important for how New Zealand allocates its money, right? So we get the census and we get an idea of who lives where, needs what, does what, and it helps us work out as a government, as a society, where to spend and prioritise our activities. We know that Māori are always undercounted in the census. I think it was about 50,000 Māori that were undercounted in the last census. And with the flooding out east, and that, it's likely that we're going to really struggle to get whānau to fill in the census again. And an undercounted Māori means that we might see less money directed to our priorities. We become less visible as a political force. If we're undercounting the number of voters by 50,000, say, that's a big number of potential voters that politicians don't realise are out there.
Yeah.
So, and especially for the regions, which tend to be where the census Māori are undercounted, it's really hard for them to be visible with 1 million 1 million person Auckland Council out there. So no, really important if we want to be counted and we want to sort of be able to argue for our share of the pie to fill in that census.
All right, so we need to fill these in ASAP.
Yeah.
All right, Professor Matt
It's not a
Rossbridge.
fun job.
No, from Massey University. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ngā mihi.
Kia ora.